Go on, skin it. Skin that smoke wagon and see what happens. Greetings, fellow barbarians. It is I, Alan Odinson, and you are listening to the Barbarian Lounge podcast. I want to thank all of you for taking a little bit of time out of your day to join me here. That quote at the beginning is from one of my favorite movies, Tombstone, starring Kurt Russell, the legendary Kurt Russell. Kurt Russell is almost a national treasure, if you ask me. Phenomenal actor. Doesn't get enough recognition. But that was a quote from the movie where he played Wyatt Earp. Wyatt Earp, perhaps one of the greatest gunslingers in the history of this planet. We're going to be talking today about the topic of gunslinging. The art of fighting with a gun. Mainly we're going to be referring to this in the realm of handguns, since that's what most of us carry. If you're not carrying that, you should be. Let's get a few things out of the way to start with. First off, if you're not subscribed to our Podbean page, please go there and find thebarbarianlounge.podbean.com. Go there, give a subscription. You can keep track of everything that's going on there. The episodes come out there first, so you can go ahead and get your hands on them before everybody else. And go out and put spoilers if you want to. Hell, I don't care. Our sponsor, the wonderful company, my friends out at Mitocon, Mito-Con-USA.com. That's MITO-CHON-USA.com. Go there and check them out. Mitocon, a phenomenal drink. Not an energy drink. It is not an energy drink. Don't get it confused with these sugar-filled, toxic cocktails they sell as energy drinks. I don't know about you guys, but I pretty much stay running on caffeine. And through all the years of the caffeine consumption I've had, those energy drinks are nothing. I might as well be pouring water down my throat. Nothing to them. Mitocon's a different story. Mitocon, it energizes and ignites the body on a mitochondrial level. Phenomenal product. Go read all about it. I always have me a glass of Mitocon sitting right here next to me. And guess what, folks? I do today. Just to keep me running, keep me focused, keep me dialed in to what we need to talk about here today. Also, Tuesday nights, 8 p.m. to 9 p.m., you can go to ucy.tv and catch the Barbarian Lounge podcast there. Yes, we had a network that actually picked up this show. Can you believe it? I know. I can't believe it myself. Right now, they're running a lot of past episodes, but you can go there, catch up, see what's going on. If you've been missing the episodes, ucy.tv is a great place to go. You can go find the Barbarian Lounge there. There's also a live chat that goes on during the show. I try and drop in there when I can to go in there and talk with people about what's going on. But you can meet like-minded individuals, discuss the topic at hand, and find possibly more information than you knew was out there on the subject. Also, a new thing that we've got going on. I don't know, it was unknown to me the amount of work that goes into podcasting. There's a lot of work that goes into it, especially when you're just a one-man show like me. You go out there, you shoot the episode, you research the episode, you edit the episode, you create the artwork, promote it. There's a lot of work that goes into podcasting, and that requires a lot of time and effort, especially on my part. For those of you who don't know, I run several businesses also on the side. That a few of them are one-man shows as well, so taking the time out to shoot these podcasts because I love my listeners, it can be very time-consuming from things that are currently making me money. There's not a lot of money in podcasting, as you know. Most of us do this, and it's the same reason I do it, because I enjoy it. However, if you would like to support the Barbarian Lounge, you can go to Patreon, that's Patreon.com The Barbarian Lounge. You can go there and make a pledge. You can go there and make a pledge. It's not a donation. It's basically, it's almost similar to a membership in a way. But basically you go there and you pledge an amount. When you go there and you pledge an amount, maybe you want to pledge $1. For every episode I produce, it will pledge $1 to the Barbarian Lounge. So if I make, let's say you say, and this is another thing too, I'm not doing a monthly subscription where you go and maybe I only do 2 episodes a month or something, and you do a monthly subscription and I just crank them out whenever I feel like it. That's not the way we're going to play this. I'm doing it a per episode pledge. So you can go there, let's take an example that you want to do $1 per episode. You want to pledge $1 per episode just to say thanks for the content that I'm putting out there. $1 per episode. If I shoot 4 episodes a month, that'll cost you $4. It'll be $4 pledged to the Barbarian Lounge, and every little bit helps. It keeps us running. I want this show to continue to grow, and it's only going to continue to grow with your help. Plain and simple. I'm not going to try and sugarcoat it in any way. There's a lot of work that goes into podcasting, and for that, I will need your help. If not now, in the future. We're looking to have a Barbarian Lounge store set up very soon where we're going to offer certain things that we talk about, certain products, some stuff from our sponsors, different things that we promote on this business, on this show, things that we promote, things we think you should get, and we're going to offer them to you at a discount price. All these little things to help this show grow. We're locking in, and we're primed and ready to keep this show rolling. And we're going to need listener support in the long run, plain and simple. So if you would like to go there, say thank you for the episodes and the content that we put out. If you've ever gotten anything from there, give us a pledge per episode. And for every episode I put out, that's how much you'll be pledged to the Barbarian Lounge. And every little bit helps, my friends. So check it out. Patreon.com/The Barbarian Lounge. That's Patreon.com/The Barbarian Lounge. So go there, check it out, and I think you'll get a lot out of it. You'll get a lot out of that. I know I've been putting a lot of content out online, also on YouTube, other places like that. You can go to YouTube and find Alan Odinson on YouTube, and you'll see videos I put out. Try and keep regular content out there too. Every little bit is going to help me continue to do that and keep my other businesses going. So today, we are talking about gunslinging, the art of fighting with a handgun. And that's what I refer to when I think of gunslinging. I don't really so much compare it to the rifleman. The American rifleman has a phenomenal place in history, and I've got a couple guests that I'm looking at in the future to have on the show to speak about that, because I think they can do it a lot more justice than I can really going into it. One of them is a gentleman, I'll say his name now. He definitely has not confirmed, so don't say that this is a confirmation he's going to be on the show, but I am actively pursuing him. A gentleman by the name of Reed Henrik. He is the head instructor at Valor Ridge. I would really like to get him on there. I've seen some of his talks about the American Rifleman, and whenever we do a show in the future on that subject, that's the guy I want to have. So Reed, if you're listening to this, get back to me, man. I want you on this show. But the art of fighting with a handgun. I look at fighting with a handgun, aka gunslinging as I would term it. That is really the first American martial art. There's some arguments as to whether or not the Bowie knife school of blade work was here, but really if you look at a prominent style, something that is uniquely American, gunslinging is it. it really came to fruition in the American West, the quote-unquote Wild West. That's when you really started to see it. If you really want to look at like the legends of gunfighting and really get a lot of knowledge on what it's like to fight with a gun, a life or death situation, people who did it regularly, you don't have to look far than some of the conflicts during the American West. You had guys like Wyatt Earp. You had guys, Doc Holliday, of course, John Wesley Hardin, William H. Bonney. These are a.k.a. Billy the Kid. Even Pat Garrett, Jesse James. A lot of these guys. There's some other famous lawmen. Of course, you got Wild Bill Hickok and Buffalo Bill. Those sorts of people. But these people fought with a handgun daily. I remember reading, there was a book out on Wild Bill Hickok that was almost kind of like a autobiography on him, and they went through some of the techniques and tactics that he used. And I used to always think to myself, well, reading that, I was like, man, this is really, really impressive, like high-level stuff here from this guy. Stuff that you have to go to classes to learn now. This guy was talking about it back in the 1800s. So, one of the things I remember from him specifically is they used to always ask him how he was so fast getting his gun out of the holster in gunfights. And he said, that's easy. I showed up with the gun already in my hand. When you start thinking about the idea of covert drawing, covert carrying, having the gun hidden in plain sight, there's the things you learn in classes. It becomes very apparent that this guy knew what he was talking about. He had seen a fight or two. The same thing. One of my favorite quotes from Wyatt Earp was, fast as, what was it, man? Here I'm gonna flub it up here. But fast is fine, but accuracy is final. It's absolutely true. There's a lot of schools out there these days that teach this fast work and everything, but they fuck up on the accuracy. You got to think, back in those days, these guys were rocking, some of them, you want to say 6 rounds, but in a lot of times they didn't have, with the revolvers they didn't have the transfer bar in there. So they actually loaded 5 rounds in their 6-shot revolver and kept the hammer rest on an empty chamber. Because back in those days, you could accidentally get a discharge by just flicking the hammer. They didn't have those transfer bars like we have today that protect us from doing that. But the American West, that's where you really saw it come into place. And of course now, in these days, the American soldier, there are so many specialists in the fields of firearms, and where do most of them originate of? Right here out of the U.S. You also see issues with, here in the U.S., one of the things that's really special that we're starting to see here now is we're starting to see the rise of the concealed carry holder. A lot of people walking around with guns these days. In the U.S., there's over 300 million plus guns, if I remember my stats correctly. 300 plus million guns. Over that. They're not even sure exactly how many are out there because, contrary to what people will tell you, there is no gun registry. I'm going to go ahead and get this off my chest real quick. We hear people all the time. I used to work at a pawn shop, and we'd have people come in and we would say, is this your gun? They're like, yeah, it's registered in my name. It's like, no, there is no national registry for handguns. I know people will tell you that if you go and buy your gun at a gun store, you go and buy that gun at a gun store, you fill out that paperwork that now that gun's registered in your name. No, that's not the case. The gun is not registered in your name. I used to be the guy that called in this stuff to the FBI. They don't ask for you can give out Social Security number, but it is optional. You do not have to do that. But they don't ask for the serial number off the gun. They don't ask for the make of the gun. All these things are stored on the physical paperwork right there in the gun shop. That's why the gun shops have to keep this paperwork until they close. They keep it indefinitely. Every single bit of paperwork they've ever filled out, since they've been open, guess what? They've still got it somewhere. So they have to keep all this paperwork. There's nothing that Nick's has that will tell them what you have. They do not have it. I'm just going to tell you, they do not have it. So you say, well, how come when a gun gets stolen, they can trace the serial number? Well, they're not tracing the serial number. What they're doing is running the serial number against a report that was issued that said that this gun was stolen. So if you get your gun stolen, you can say, hey, my 1911 was stolen. Well, what's the serial number? Well, I don't know what the serial number is. There's not a lot they can do for you. When you make your report and you give them the serial number, guess what? That's going to enter a database of stolen guns. And then if your gun is found, then they can run the serial number, and there you go. So all of these things come into effect, and a lot of people don't realize this, so they get kind of freaky about going to an actual gun shop and purchasing a handgun. Please don't freak out. But we're seeing the rise of concealed carry holders now. You have, most states are offering concealed carry. Most states have a certain reciprocity, meaning that I can take my concealed carry permit in this state and go to another state that offers reciprocity with my state. I'm in South Carolina. Recently, we did not have reciprocity with Georgia. They just passed a law, so we have reciprocity now. Fantastic. Glad to see it. Thank you very much, Georgia and South Carolina governments, for getting your head out your ass and realizing that people drive back and forth across the border all the time. One of the things I find out that we're going to talk about a couple different things. The first thing I want to state right off the bat, I'm going to talk about some legal issues here. I want to state immediately that I am not in any way, shape, or form a lawyer. I do not have any degrees hanging on my wall stating different laws. I have and was a South Carolina concealed carry permit instructor and NRA pistol instructor. I was both of those. So I do have a bit of knowledge in this subject matter. We're not going to go deep into it, but I do want to cover just 3 specific things here that a lot of people get confused over, and things you should know before you even think about engaging in any sort of gunfight. And these laws are going to differ from state to state. The first one, let's talk about deadly force. What is deadly force? The definition of deadly force is the amount of force that is likely to cause either serious bodily injury and death. So, serious bodily injury or death. What is serious bodily injury or death? Is it somebody punching you in the stomach? That's going to be a tough sell. Is it somebody trying to gouge your eye out? Yeah, that falls under the category of serious bodily injury. Now, when it comes to actual use of force, use of deadly force, if you will. Use of deadly force is the imminent or immediate threat of serious bodily injury or death. Now, that may be defined, that is a United States general definition of that. But you find a lot of people don't really understand the concept of deadly force and what authorizes use of deadly force. I think I've talked about this on the show before, but I've talked to specifically my jiu-jitsu friends. People train in jiu-jitsu and they say, I'll take the guy down and choke him out. Or I'll mount the guy and beat his face in or whatever. They do not realize that on the street, in a street-type situation, if you armbar a guy and are attempting to break his arm, does he have a lethal option to employ against you from breaking his arm? Is snapping my arm not considered serious bodily injury? Would a reasonable person consider that serious bodily injury? Yeah, they would. So, same thing goes for if you're choking the guy. It's like, well, I'll just choke him and he'll go to sleep and that's that. Well, let me tell you something. The average person doesn't know that. The average person who has not taken jiu-jitsu does not know. And let's be honest. If you keep the choke on there too long, you don't know what kind of injury you may cause. They may have a clot in their neck that they do not know about and you do not know about, and you go to do that choke, and that clot may decide to break loose, and guess what? You've killed somebody because you put a choke on them. Also, think about if you're choking. If I got you in a chokehold and you go to sleep, until you wake up, I can do to you whatever I want to. Understand that. So all of these things go into effect when you start talking about choking somebody. The average person thinks they're dying. Would that be an imminent? Would that be the thought of would a reasonable person think they were going to die? That imminent death was about to occur? Yes, they would. So if you're choking somebody with your rear naked choke, and let's just say we'll go with the avenue of blades here. Let's say they pull a blade out and reach around and start stabbing you and employing lethal force. Guess what? That's justified under this code of law. Now, of course, there's circumstances that would lead up to that would determine whether or not it's justified. But, breaking it down to its base cause, yeah, that's what you're looking at there, guys. So people need to really get the idea of deadly force and exactly what it is in use of that force. And that leads us into the stand your ground laws. We hear about stand your ground laws all the time. And what is the definition of it? It is basically, it's no duty to retreat any place where you have the lawful right to be. You may use any level of force if you reasonably believe that there is the threat of serious bodily injury or death. So with the stand your ground law, basically that means if I am somewhere that I have the right to be at, I'm not breaking any laws, and I get attacked, I do not have to retreat. Or let me rephrase that. If I get attacked and if a guy's got a blade on me, and or he pulls a gun, I do not have to take off running before I can defend myself. I do not have to weigh all the options I have to escape before I can defend myself. It's real simple. The media paints this picture that you stand your ground law is some sort of, right to shoot everybody on the street. You don't have to run. Well, it's to prevent victims from getting shot in the back. That's what a stand your ground law is. There are some that are ridiculous that you can't even stand your ground in your own home. That you have to leave. You have to run away in your own home before you can defend yourself. So you have to weigh all these options while the bad guy, he's not weighing these things in. He's just there to do you harm. So it's important to understand a stand your ground law. It's important to understand deadly force. There's also castle doctrine, and that's basically you have no duty to retreat in your home. A lot of times that goes over to in some places it's different, but that goes over to vehicle as well, or your business that you own. Your vehicle. That's another thing people don't understand. In your vehicle, you also have castle doctrine. Stand your ground falls under that category as well. So basically, the stand your ground is to prevent you from getting shot in the back. It's making sure that you have the right to defend your life, and you don't have to think about ways you can run away while the bad guy's thinking about shooting you in the face. A lot of people get that mixed up. We heard that with the Trayvon Martin issue. It was like, oh, well, he was unarmed and everything. And, I find that a lot of these people, I think to myself, in that situation, a lot of these people that we're talking about, they've never been in a fight. They've never been in even an MMA sparring session. And I say to those people, if you were on the ground and I was on top of you, and I was punching you in the face repeatedly, would you think you were going to die? I can tell you, I've been there. I remember my first MMA class. I remember the first time we engaged with punches with our grappling, and a guy got mounted on me that was much better than me. I'd only been training a few weeks, got on top of me and started beating my face in. And guess what? You think you're going to die. And you factor in also the situation where you don't know who this person is. You factor in the situation that your head's getting beaten into the concrete. You're starting to see blood. Yeah, would a reasonable person in that situation believe they were going to die or suffer serious bodily injury or death? Absolutely. Because especially if you start getting lightheaded and you feel yourself getting ready to pass out, guess what? Who knows what's going to happen when you go to sleep? You don't know what's going to happen. I guarantee you, all these little media moonbats who are out there telling you that, oh, well, he was unarmed and everything, and he was just innocent. Nah, let me tell you something. If any of you assholes were on the bottom and I was on top of you beating your face in, I guarantee you would think you were going to die. We also hear this with the knockout game. The knockout game. Now, if a guy just walks up and punches you, does that mean you can just pull your gun out and start blazing on him? That's going to be a difficult argument. It's going to be a very difficult argument. But let's talk about the knockout game. If somebody punches you, you hear about people dying from getting punched. They don't die from just getting hit. They die from hitting the ground. That's why whenever I work with people with realistic or street type situations with striking, I always want them to make contact with the person, whether it's grabbing an arm, clothes, neck, something that's so you can control their descent to the ground. Because you don't want an instance where you blast a guy and he falls and cracks his head on the ground, cracks his skull in and dies right there, because you were just trying to defend yourself. Because now it ups the ante. If it may be a one-on-one fist fight, and as soon as that guy hits the ground and dies, they're going to start looking at, well, why'd you use lethal force? And it's like, well, that wasn't my intent, but yeah, it happened. So these instances where people were walking up and supposed knockout game, I'll tell you something, knocking somebody out is not a game. When they hit the ground like that, that's where people die. So there are arguments as to whether or not this would constitute using deadly force. Threat of imminent serious bodily injury or death? Man, that's a tough one. You better have your P's and Q's in a line if you want to cross that line to employ lethal force in such a situation. I cannot tell you what to do. I will not tell you what to do in that situation. I'm just going to tell you that the options that are available on both sides, and neither one of them are good. Well, I talked about being choked or armbarred. That's also a big one there, man. Guys don't really think about that. Like, it's just an armbar. He can tap. Listen, he's not going to tap on the street. He's not going to know what you're doing. He's going to think you're breaking his arm. And because of the stress situation, you're probably going to break his arm. So if you got that armbar on him and all of a sudden he reaches in and pulls out his piece and reaches over and shoots you in the face, guess what? The guy was trying to break my arm. I thought he was going to kill me. I didn't know what was going to happen. All these things start playing into account. Any sort of weapon attack, we hear about the Tueler drill all the time, that 21-foot rule, where if a guy's got a blade on you and he's charging at you, you got 21 feet. That's actually been extended to 28 feet now, according to my sources in the FBI. They've extended that even further. I don't know if people are getting faster or they realize that people are getting slower at drawing their weapons. So that has been extended. So any sort of weapon situation, that becomes a big issue as well. Multiple opponents become an issue because if you've ever we've done some realistic training here at my gym before, and you start trying to fight 4 and 5 people, and if you get on the ground, they're all like pounding on you. Guess what, man? You think you're going to die, and you go to sleep. Guess what? You may die. They knock you out. They knock you to the ground and beat you till you're unconscious. You don't know what's going to happen next. You have no clue what's going to happen next. You run into issues, especially when it comes to use of force. You run into disparity of force issues. I'll tell you, as I've heard Masad Ayub, one of the legendary people in the firearms world, especially when it comes to law, he talks about issues where a full-grown adult male, it's a tough sell for you to have 2 people empty-handed who are going to attack you, and you use your pistol to defend yourself. It's going to be a difficult sell in the legal system, especially if you're a larger man. If you're large like myself, you lift, you're trained in some way. Using that firearm on those 2 people, man, that might be an issue. 3 people, it's a little bit better on your side. 1 person, definitely not. If it's, well, let me rephrase that. 1 person, not if you're similar in size and everything. There have been some issues, but again, it's going to depend on your jury. Now, when you get out into the multiple opponent, Messiah talks about, you get 4 people, yeah, you're going to start running issues where you can actually employ deadly force in that situation. However, what you run into is, say you pop one guy and he drops, well, now it's become, well, let's say you pop 2 of them and they drop, and the other 2 are standing there. Masad Ayub says that has now become, it's no longer a 4-on-1, but now it's a 2-on-1. And now you're starting to buck the odds of your chances of getting off legally with a use of force argument. If you drop it down to you pop the first 3 and there's just one guy unarmed there, and you go ahead and do the coup de grace on him, guess what? That's going to be, especially if there's any witnesses around, that's going to be an issue. That's going to be a big issue that you're going to have to deal with in a legal fight. So there's a lot of things that go into it, and that leads us right into our 3 stages of a gunfight. There's 3 stages. The 3 stages I've heard. You're going to hear me quote several things from a firearms instructor that I have a lot of respect for. A lot of people they don't know him, so that they have opinions. But this is the 3 stages of gunfights that I've heard from a gentleman by the name of James Yeager. He is the head instructor of tactical response in Camden, Tennessee. 3 stages of a gunfight. You've got the actual fight, the psychological fight, and the legal fight. The actual fight is exactly as it sounds. It's the actual physical fight, and that's actually probably going to be one of the easier parts of the gunfight. If you survive it, guess what? It's easy. It's usually over with very quickly. It's done with. Well, then you have the psychological fight. And that's going to it's going to be different for different people. Because some people are going to be able to handle that shooting a lot better than others. People may run into issues with PTSD. People may run into issues where they've got that edginess. They may run into issues where sleeping problems. That's going to also play into what faith they follow. A Christian person involved in a shooting may have a different response. I'm not going to say may. They will have a different response than someone of the heathen path would be. Someone like myself. We have different mentalities in the way we deal with these things. So the psychological fight is going to be different for everybody. And then the hardest fight of all is the last one. It's the legal fight. And that's a fight that you're definitely going to have to go through, and it's going to be probably the scariest part of the whole incident, because you don't know what your fate's going to be. It's going to depend on how you handled the situation when it happened. It's going to depend on what you did before, what you did after, what you did during, the jury you have, the judge you have, your history. A lot of things are going to play into fact with the legal fights. One of the most overlooked aspects of the actual gunfight itself is the legal fight. And this is why it's so important to have things in line and have the questions already answered before something like this happens, so you know what to do. This is where training comes in. A lot of people think you go to training just to learn how to shoot things, and how to gunfight. Yeah, you do, but the legal issue is one of the big things that a lot of these schools go over. I know Tactical Response has an extensive coverage of legal issues that go into the actual fight, and I think that's phenomenal. It's definitely something that people need to understand. They need to understand what's coming afterwards. Once you understand the ramifications of the legalities of things, it also is going to make you a smarter shooter. Your decision-making process is going to be better. If you answer all those questions ahead of time, it's going to make everything easier. I've talked about that before. However, you don't want to become paralyzed by legality. I've heard people say before that they don't carry a gun with them. And it's like, well, what happens if you get robbed? They're like, man, I just don't want to carry my gun. I got too much to lose. And it's like, too much to lose? What more do you have to lose than your life? There's nothing else. It's like, oh man, I could lose my house, I could lose this, I could lose that. What do you have that's more important than your actual life? So these guys are fucking dingbats. It doesn't make any sense. You are your own first responder. And the next subject I want to cover, let me take a sip of my Mitacon here, about the halfway point. Oh man, that's some good stuff. Mitacon. Check them out at mito-conusa.com. We're going to talk about here types of gun owners. And this is another thing that I've gotten from Tactical Response, and I think this is phenomenal. I've been in the gun world for a long time. I've been in the martial arts world for a long time. Been in the archery world for a long time. And all of these things, it doesn't just apply to gun owners, man. I'm telling you, it applies to all those things I just said. You even see it in the knife world as well. It's everywhere. It's just it's a certain mentality of people. But this, in the terms of what we're talking about here, we're talking about types of gun owners. The types of gun owners. You have the first one. There are going to be 6 types. The first one is going to be the talisman. The talisman, a gun owner who believes that their gun is some magic talisman that can repel evil spirits. And as long as I have my gun, I'm safe. I've heard that so many times. Man. These guys, they don't train, they don't practice drawing, they don't do anything but maybe fire every now and then, but they're like, oh, I got a gun on me. And it's like, yeah. It's the same thing with the old gun, don't bring a knife to a gunfight. It's like, please, man. You can't even get that shit out of your pocket right now before I can cut you open 5 different ways. So you get these people that believe it's some sort of magic charm. That I've got a gun, so now I am invincible. I have a shield around me, and you can't touch me. It's absolute bullshit, Gandalf. Then you have the collector. The collector is exactly as it sounds. It's somebody who is a gun collector. They just like to have all these different things. They like to show off their guns, man. They're the guys that constantly talk about what model they have, what type of holster they use, what type of ammo, and they go through, they know the name of every single thing that's on their gun. And these guys, they don't want their gun scratched. If it gets a scratch on it, holy shit, it's the end of the world. These guys freak out. Oh my God. It's like, hey man, and we're going to fire 2 rounds. I want you to drop your gun on the concrete, pick it up, fire 2 more rounds. They're like, what? It'll get scratched. It's like, oh shit, come on, man. So, I hear this a lot in the archery world. You find it in the archery world as well, man. It's crazy. As soon as I start talking to guys about archery, like, yeah, I got me a Matthews solo cam with a such and such a hog father sight and this type of arrow I'm using and this sort of release and all this. And I'm like, well, you ever shoot 80 yards with it? Well, no. Oh, Jesus Christ. You know, so these guys fall into the category of people that just collect a lot of things. Musashi warned about that in his book of 5 Rings. He warned about being a collector of weapons. He says, do not be a collector of weapons. You need to be able to use all of them. Do not collect any weapon. Do not have any weapon that you do not use or cannot use. The hobbyist is the third one. The hobbyist is someone who may be in the beginner stage. Maybe they've decided that they were playing golf and they're like, you know what? I'm going to be a shooter now. I'm going to start learning guns. And there's nothing wrong with these people. They're just starting out. They're the new guys. They're just starting to pick up things. They're starting to read some gun magazines and they're starting to take a few classes, and that shows they're going in the right direction. But this stage can go either way. Usually it's not going to go, they're usually not going to move to a collector or a talisman. Probably not a talisman, possibly a collector. But they have the option. This person have options of branching into any of these other categories. So this is an important stage to find people in. When people are in this stage, it's important to steer them in the right direction. Maybe some of them listen to this show and maybe they'll take some of this information to heart. The fourth one is the competitor. The competitor, man, people who do competitive gun shooting. I've done some IPSC and some IDPA in the past, and It's a lot of fun. I've done some 3-gun as well. It's a lot of fun to do, but the competitor is all about the competition. They're about winning. They're about times. They're about collecting trophies. It's the same thing you see in the martial arts world as well. You see these guys that, they're the jiu-jitsu school that they always start on their ass butt scooting towards you. Those are like the competitors. And there's nothing wrong with the competitors. The competitors are phenomenal athletes. They're going to be better than your average person because they do work under stress. However, it's important for them to realize what they are. They are a competitor. So don't get it twisted in what you're doing here. Number 5, the gunfighter. And I use that particular wording, the gunfighter, because I see these people a lot too, man. The gunfighter, they're the guys that are basically, they're walking around, they're usually carrying some big giant hog leg type pistol or some 1911 or something like that, and they believe that 1911 falls under the category of a talisman for them. And they got this leather holster because I ain't putting my gun in a plastic holster, and they're the ones that laugh at Glocks. They're like, oh, that thing's made of plastic. Ah, ha, ha, ha. What are you going to beat them with whenever it runs out of ammo? And it's like, what are you talking about? My fist? I don't know. Shoot my other gun? All these guys, what these guys are filled with, though, that separates the gunfighter from the last group, what separates the gunfighter from all these other people is the cliche bullshit. all of the if you need more than one round, you need more time at the range. And I want to put a bigger hole in them with this one. I don't want no little pea shooter. All this cliche fucking bullshit. Never bring a gun to a knife fight. They got all these cliches they've heard from every single Dirty Harry movie, and they've built their image around this. And that gun that they have on them, that is like a fucking extension of their body. I mean, they believe that gun it has to be kept in pristine condition. And they baby that thing, man. They don't want anything to happen to it. No scratches, no nothing. Doesn't have a bit of rust on it. I mean, it is just, every night they tuck that thing into the crib and wish it good night. Turn on the little heart music for it so it can sleep better. I mean, that's the type of people these guys are. And a lot of them, they haven't even been in a lot of situations, man. Or maybe even worse, I've always heard that this is a worse situation, and I found it in other things that I've taught in the past. I found it to be true. They say some of the worst guys for classes are the guys who've actually been in a gunfight. And the reason that is those guys actually, since they won that one fight, now every single thing they have built in their head is based off of that one fight. They don't factor in the certain factors that allow them to win that fight to start with. So you see it in martial arts too. You got that guy that's got that one good punch. Prime example, Mirko Krokop had the left high kick of doom. Man, he knocked everybody out with that left high kick. If it hit, you were dead. Well, then he kicked Fedor Emelianenko in the head, and Fedor just looked at him. Didn't go anywhere. And you could see in Mirko's body language was like, oh shit, this guy did not drop. What am I going to do now? We saw the same thing when he hit Mark Hunt with it. He hit Mark Hunt numerous times in the head with that high kick, and guess what? Mark Hunt just looked at him, kept coming, kept punching him. So, you run into that. I run into it with the archery guys. They do that one. There's that one thing that they have to go on, or maybe they've done some LARP or whatever, and they're like, "Oh, I do good with this in LARP." And I'm like, "This is a little different. We're not shooting arrows back at you. We're actually shooting paintballs." So, and the last group is the martial artists. The martial artists, those are the guys that I like. That's the type of gun guy I like to refer to myself as the martial artist. These guys are the guys that are going out and training. They never believe they know everything. They're always practicing drawing that gun. They do a lot of dry fire. They know the difference between training and practice. They have a mindset to them. They seek the classes. They're willing to save up money so they could not buy a gun and not buy some gear next year, so they can actually attend a class. They know that the root word of gunfight is not gun, it is fight. And you can have whatever gun you want to, but if you're not into the fight and you're not willing to fight, doesn't matter what you have. That's the mentality of the martial artist. And I see that as well with like the bow. I tell people, with our modern combat archery program at Odinson Archery, we promote bow fighting. And people are like, what's bow fighting? And I'm like, it's not this idea that it's about changing the parameters and making that I have this bow. I'm looking to turn it into a fight here. I'm not looking to stand here in front of the person and do all this hokey shit. I'm trying to change the parameters of the fight so that it's not a gunfight anymore. It's not a gunfight, it's now a bow fight. And there's certain aspects of the bow that have advantages over the gun, even silenced weapons, that I talk about in some of the lectures that we have at our classes. So we're going to get into what I've termed Odinson's rules for handgun fighting. And first off, I will say that I have been in 2 shoot, no shoot scenarios. I've done a lot of force on force. I did a good bit of force on force many, many years ago when I was working in nuclear security. We used to do regular force on force there. But in the actual realm of security, I have been in 2 shoot, no shoot scenarios. One of them was very, very close to being a shoot scenario. And when I say very, very close, I'm talking about sights lined up on the person. Gun was out the holster, sights lined up on the person, finger on the trigger, tension coming off of it before they backed off. I may get into that story in the future. I don't know if I'll get into it on this episode. We'll see how it plays out. But Odinson's rules for gunfighting. These are things that I have run into in situations where I've been close to using deadly force. Situations where deadly force may become an option. Also, things that I picked up in my training that I've received from other instructors in the past. A plethora of different instructors from a lot of different fields. We have been to a lot of different people with a lot of different thought processes. But this is just some rules that I have found that they tend to share in common. And some of them will have a little bit of my bias to them. And I'm sure there's more you could add to it. But we're gonna keep it simple. The first rule: carry enough ammunition. What do I mean by that? I mean you need to have more than just carrying 6 rounds on you. I found an incident many years ago where we had inadvertently, me and my wife had inadvertently wandered into a very, very dangerous area. We had wandered into a dangerous area that we were actually told it wasn't. I think it was one of those Craigslist scams where they lure you out. But when we realized where we were at, we quickly made a turn. Luckily, the individuals that were there did not see us and did not start coming our way. But I remember thinking to myself, the only thing I could think about as we're making our way out of the area was, oh my God, do I have enough ammunition on me? This was prior to any sort of really hardcore training I've been doing. I was thinking, do I have enough ammunition? I really don't know. I'm not sure. You don't want to ever, let me tell you right now, you do not ever want to put yourself in that situation. Never, ever, ever. That was a very, very stressful. I think we had to walk maybe about 100 yards to get out of there. That was the most stressful 100 yards I've ever had to walk in my life. Because you never knew. I knew that if those individuals would have come after us, that I was going to definitely be outgunned in that situation. And at the time, I'm trying to think, I had 20 rounds of ammunition on me. And I did not feel like that was enough. And I can tell you right now, to this day, I do not think that would have been enough ammunition. And it wasn't like a gigantic gang or anything. It was probably about 4 or 5 people. That's not enough ammunition. If I'm lucky, it is. Most likely, I don't want to depend on luck. Luck is not a plan. So I don't carry around a horseshoe with me. So maybe I should. Maybe that would help. You never want your gun to run dry in a gunfight. You want to make sure you've got more than 6 rounds in your gun. A lot of people get caught up in this whole pocket pistol thing because, to be quite honest with you, they don't want to carry around a full-size gun. And by full-size, I mean something in the 15-round plus range. They don't want to carry that around with them. Why? Oh, it's uncomfortable. Well, carrying around a gun isn't meant to be comfortable. It's meant to be comforting, to quote the legendary Jeff Cooper. But the last thing you want to do in any force-on-force drills I've ever done, the last thing you want to see is your slide locked open during the middle of the gunfight. Or the click come out of your gun if you've got a revolver or if you've got a misfire. It's the last thing that you want to run into. The last thing. I can assure you, you do not want to look down and see that slide locked open. You do not. A lot of these guys, man, with these pocket pistols, they carry them around in their pockets, and they got 5 rounds in it, and that's the primary gun they're carrying. And if that's all you got, hey, great. I'm glad you're carrying a gun. But I would urge them to get something that holds more ammunition, because I don't care how many magazines you got. If you've got a 5-6 shot gun, and you're carrying around 5 magazines, you've got 25 rounds on you. And most people aren't going to carry around 5 magazines. Whereas, say my Glock 19, I can carry around 2 magazines with me, and I've got 30 rounds just with 2 mags. So, and I don't just carry 2 mags, guys. So carry enough ammunition. That's rule number 1. You don't want to get in a situation where you got to start counting shots. One of my friends told me he was in some place that was kind of sketchy, and he started looking at the number of people, and he didn't have a lot of ammunition on him. That was what he was thinking. He's like, oh shit, am I going to have to make these guys share a bullet? I don't know. Maybe I can get them to line up and pull the old Deadpool, shoot through 3 heads. Trust me, you do not want that. So, easiest result, just carry more ammunition. Number 2, a reliable gun. Make sure you get a reliable gun. I can tell you in the world of firearms, you get what you pay for in most cases. If you buy a gun for $100, you're going to get $100 worth of protection. I hear from the high point people. Yes, high point people. I know a lot of people don't want to rag on you guys, but Odinson's here, and this is real talk here. You fucking high point people. You may tell me, oh, my high point never has any problems. That's great. I'm absolutely thrilled for you. How many rounds have you run through it? Have you run 500 rounds? Have you run 1,000 rounds through it? Have you run 1,000 rounds through it in a day? I guarantee you, any firearms class that I have been in, under credible instructors, I guarantee you your high point would not make it halfway through the class. Guaranteed. I have never heard of a high point making it through one of these classes. So these guys, what I used to tell people when they would come into the gun shop, they'd be looking at guns, they're like, oh man, I'd be like, oh, we got this Glock 19 here, we got several Glocks, we got some HKs, we got Smith & Wesson, and they're like, oh man, how much is that one right there? I'm like, oh, the high point? Well, it's $150. And they're like, oh, I'm like, well, how much is your life worth to you? Is it worth $150? Is your family's life worth $150? Well, if it is, please get the high point. If it's not, get the other one. That's not a marketing ploy on my part. Yes, does it work marketing? Yeah, it sells really well. But the thing is I'm legit when I'm saying that. That's how much protection you're going to get. It's not, overall, a high point is not a reliable gun. It's a piece of shit. It's a paperweight. It's probably not even a suitable paperweight. So all you high point guys out there, man, get your heads out your asses. Throw that thing away and get a reliable gun. What are some reliable guns? Good guns. Any of the Glock brand. I know people, oh man, Glock, you're one of those Glock guys. You know why everybody carries Glocks? Because they work. It's kind of like the idea of, I used to term the Labrador, mainly the black lab. The black lab was always the Glock of dogs. It's the dog that everybody's got. Everybody says get a lab, and I'm like, I'm like, why does everybody just want a lab? Why does everybody want labs? Until I got a lab, and it's the best fucking dog I've ever had in my life. So there's a reason everybody has it. Of course, your Smith & Wesson M&Ps, phenomenal guns. Smith & Wesson M&Ps are fantastic. Your SIGs are making good guns. They've always made good guns. They can be a little pricey. Your HKs used to be the high dollar stuff, man, but the HKs have dropped recently, and they've got their VP9. The HK VP9 is phenomenal. I love the feel of that handgun, and you can get them for about the same price as a Glock. Most Glocks are running you about $499. You can get them sometimes you can get them $489, $479. If you're law enforcement, you can get them a little cheaper. So if you're looking for something on the cheaper round of a good gun, and when I say cheaper, I mean inexpensive, the Sky, the SCCY, the CPX1, CPX2, have gotten phenomenal reviews, and they run you under $300. And I've seen them torture tested, I've seen them put through the ringer, and they work really well. So I've had the chance to handle them, and I'm very, very impressed with them. So that's what I would recommend. Bad guns I would say not get. High point, you're at the top of the list, my friend. You're a piece of trash. The high point carbines, those things work pretty good actually. But high point pistols, piece of shit. Do not buy them. Bursa, no, don't get a Bursa. Don't get a fucking llama. Don't get any. If it's named after, if it's named a llama, it's worthless. Bursa's the same way. And I know there's people here that's going, well, I've never had any trouble with my Bursa. And I ask you, ask yourself, how many rounds have you actually put through that gun? Taurus autos. I am not a fan of Taurus automatics. Taurus makes very good revolvers. I've never had any problems with Taurus revolvers. But as far as autos go, I've seen Tauruses are Jamamatics a lot of times. Berettas. I'm not a fan of Beretta autos. When I was doing nuclear security, we were running the Berettas. And I must say, after a lot of shooting, they jam up a lot. You could ask anybody in military who's had to run Berettas. All the guys I've talked to agree with me on that. And I know there's some of you guys who listen to this own Berettas are like, how dare you talk about my Beretta? Look, man, I'm just telling you, in the long run, your Beretta's going to break. They also had some issues with the Berettas cracking right around where the ejection port is on there. The slide cracking on them and coming apart mid-shot. So that's a phenomenal thing to get stuck in your face. Another auto I'm not a fan of are Ruger automatics. Yes, I like the Mark II, the 22. Those are good. But Ruger makes phenomenal revolvers. Automatics, not so much. They tend to run you on the low end. I've seen a lot of guys buy them, and guess what? Jamming issues. They all run into jamming issues. So make sure that you look up the good and the bad about the handgun you're getting. Look for something reliable. Look for something that's going to save your life. You do not want to have to ask yourself the question as to whether or not your gun's going to work this day when the time comes that you need it. Always remember that. Number three, knockdown power is a myth. Don't get caught up in this whole idea of selecting a caliber, a big honking high-pressure caliber, because it has more knockdown power. There's no such thing as knockdown power. I don't care who tells you this. Listen to me right now. Any credible instructor will tell you that knockdown power is a myth, especially in the realm of handguns. Knockdown power is a myth. It's all about shot placement. So what you run into is you get guys who should be shooting a 9mm, and they move up and they buy a 40, a 45, a 10mm, or something like this, and they sacrifice that recoil and bullet size because they want knockdown power. Let me tell you, at the end of the day, it's all about where you're going to put the rounds. The primary cause of death from gunshot wounds is either bleeding or a central nervous system shutdown of some sort. That's it. Blood loss, central nervous system shutdown. That's why it's important to know anatomy. Understand the anatomical targets that you're going to be aimed for. It's the same thing I've talked about with the knife work. But people get this idea. I've had it with a lot of guys. They're like, I don't know if I should get a 9 or a 40. I'm like, get a 9. Get a 9. I can shoot a 40 pretty good. I'm like, well, you'll shoot a 9mm better. So get a 9. And these guys go out and they get these 40 calibers, and it's a high pressure round. Much worse on the gun. Even really good guns, the 40 is a lot of pressure on most guns. It's a very snappy round, hard recoil, so these guys, they get flinchy when they start shooting, and they start slinging shots everywhere. And I say, hey man, you're flinching. They say, oh no, I'm not flinching, something's wrong with the gun. So I'll take their gun from them and put a empty case in there and tell them fire it again, and they'll go click, and they'll sling the gun down to the ground. They'll point it towards the ground because they're flinching like crazy. Don't get caught up in this idea of believing this knockdown power myth. There's a reason that law enforcement is moving away from the 40. It was a mistake when they moved there to start with. It was a mistake to a non-existent problem. Now they're starting, through a lot of the evidence they've started to find, they're moving back to 9mm. It's easier to manage. You can hold more ammunition. It's more plentiful. Low recoil. You can be more accurate with it, and you can put those shots where it needs to be. So do not get caught in this whole idea. The caliber of the gun is not more important than you are and your ability to wield it. Number 4, carry a backup gun. And I get some shit for this from people as well, but this is something I picked up in my force on force work as well that I've done in the past. Number 5, practice long range. A lot of people do not get to shooting at further distance than about 7 yards. I do see some people do that, but usually not beyond 15, usually not beyond 25 yards. Why not train at all ranges of the fight? Because you never know what range the threat's going to come from.
Tracks you can catch every Monday night at